Hello and welcome back to Everon Railways. In this video I'm going to be talking about what's known as the House
Stanice.
Stanice, and I believe that translates from Czech to English as station, which is pretty ironic since we all know there aren't any railways on Everon, but there will be in the next year. Okay, the House Stanice. It's a little cabin-like structure. It's orange and yellowish, and it has a chimney, and it also has an antenna, which obviously you can't see here on the casting blank, but we'll be talking about that a little later, and I will attempt to make an antenna on the finished model. The mold for the House Stanice, I'll do that again, House
Stanice.
Stanice, is good old reliable Smooth-On's Mold Max 30, and it's a solid. It's a one-piece mold that makes solid resin castings. This particular casting needs to be cleaned up. This is as it looks coming out of the mold, and this excess resin will just be simply taken off by putting this on top of a belt sander and grinding that excess resin away. There are 9 House
Stanice.
There are 9 House Stanices on Everon. I have all 9 casting blanks cast, so I'm pretty much done with it. So what's next? The next is to grind this down and to apply paint on the exposed edges. The edges that will be exposed, I should say, after our screenshot panels are applied. So we'll get that done and be back. Okay, we have the casting blank cleaned up. Excess resin has been removed, and we also painted the exposed sides. The roof line here, on the eaves, the peak, and also in here, because that will be exposed, this orange here. And this looks sloppy, and it looks like a disaster, but trust me, on the finished model, this will all blend in nicely after we apply our screenshots. And our screenshots, I have them right here. This is what they look like coming off the printer. I probably could have consolidated 2 pages here. But this is all there is to it, really. These are now printed out to scale, and this process is just as long a process. When I say this process, I mean getting these panels scaled to the proper size in the model from which was designed in Google SketchUp. It's a long and tedious process, and the first structure is usually the most time-consuming because it's a trial and error. If any adjustments need to be made, I have to go back into the program, resize the panels, etc., to get it just right, and to then cut them out and put them on the model to see how they actually fit. And here they are. These end pieces here, and these side pieces and roof. There's our tile roof, and it has the little area for the chimney whited out. So we'll cut along those lines to give us the hole for the chimney. These are all, these particular 2 pages here are printed out on the matte photo paper, which is pretty thick. Just regular matte photo paper you buy in any office supply store. Now And on this last little page here, these are the chimney sides right here. This little piece will wrap around the chimney. And there's the chimney top. I had two of them printed out. Actually, one's darker and I won't even be using that one, but I'll be using this, and you can see the sides of the chimney. And I'll cut and trace out along this, the perimeter here, and white glue these to the side of the chimney. It's very delicate work, but it works actually quite well. When this paper gets saturated with white glue, it's actually like wallpapering in miniature. And we'll get that done. Okay, I've installed one side, and that's on the chimney side. And what I need to do next is to drill a hole for the antenna. Now, I'll show you the antenna right here. Okay, and one thing that's nice about that detail, that antenna, is on this screen panel here. I don't know if you can see it, but there is right where that little pipe comes out of the wall and goes up. That's exactly where the antenna runs through, right up parallel to that pipe. So what I need to do now is drill a hole in the roof before I add any other panels to that, or for that antenna. Got a little pin vise here. I've already got a drill bit inside of it that will work to fit and I haven't even mentioned this, we will be making the antenna out of very thin brass wire. And I'll show that a little later. But that's what we'll be using. And we need a hole for that, because if you can see in the game, that antenna runs right up through the roof. So what we'll do is, I'll see if I can do this on one try here and not mess up the model while I do it on camera. So let's say we want to line this up with, and we need to look and see, no, that's not going to do it. If we come in right about there, how will that work? That might do it. Okay, we're lined up. I'm in the light. I'm lined up pretty well here. And I think if we come straight down, this lighting is terrible, my apologies. But right now I need to make sure this comes straight down through that. And there we go. We just came out the other end there. And there's our bit. And we are right exactly. And I apologize if you can't see that. We are right where we need to be. See if we'll reverse that up through. And there we go. We've got our hole drilled. If this will focus, this is getting frustrating. Okay, I'll just have to keep it back here. We've got our hole drilled, and now we can just pretty much go ahead and continue the build. Very simple. This is a Zona pin vise with actually some Zona drill bits. And these things go, that went through that very quickly. Okay, we'll continue the build. Okay, I've completed putting all the screenshots to the sides of the buildings and the roof. And I pretty much have a completed model. And I gotta say, I like this little building. I like this little cabin. Stanice. It came out nice, I think. Cute little building. And all that paint that looked like a disaster earlier is all blended in there. And I like the way that color actually blended in with that roof line, or that tile roof. It's kind of a brownish, it's actually a mix of two paints here. What do we have here? It doesn't really say, does it? Terracotta maybe? And a dab of black. But I think there's one thing, I've got to get away from using these cheap craft paints. They might be great for landscaping and things like that applied to plaster, but I don't think they're going to stay on resin. So as convenient as they are and as cheap as they are, I'm going to have to order some actual real model paints like Tamiya, and some other specific plastic model paints. I'm going to have to get rid of this acrylics because I don't think they're going to stay on this resin. But I was lucky here where, and I don't know if you can see that, but that yellow, I was lucky. I found an exact match, and I was concerned about if I was going to be able to match it. Again, cheap craft store paint I might have to get rid of. But this orange turned out to be an almost exact match for that little recessed panel line. Okay, so now I need to build that antenna and install that, and we've pretty much got a completed building. I've never built one of these antennas before. Like I said, we were going to use the very thin brass wire. And what the plan is, and you'll see here in a minute, is I'm going to attempt to solder two cross pieces. I'll run two cross pieces across, and that'll give me the antenna, and solder those together. And we'll see how that turns out. I have the game pulled up, and here you can see the antenna on the Stanice. And that's what we're going to try. We are about to try, or attempt to, replicate. And right here, I have, here's the brass wire. I'm not sure again if this is getting into focus. I have brass wire there, and it's taped down, and I left it long, obviously, because if you leave it long, it's so much easier to work with. And it is taped into position. Now, I still have to tape this one little piece here, but the standard, or the unit of measurement I used for spacing, so when I replicate future antennae, is to ensure that they all are uniform in their design, is I use a simple PC N-scale PC railroad tie that's used in hand laying track, and there will be many videos on that in the future when we get into the hand laying of track videos. Alright, so I need to attempt to solder these together and then trim them to the correct proportion. Okay, I haven't soldered anything in over a year, so I may be a little rusty in my procedure. Let's see here. I'll get a little bit of, get some flux here. And let's be careful where we put this flux. hope I do not use too much solder because it's very easy to do. Alright, I've got my Weller solder station here. I've tinned the tip. And I'm ow! Whew, just burned my arm on that. And this is awkward because I'm trying to do this in camera, and let's get a little bit of solder on that tip. Alright. Here goes nothing. Well, we'll see. I hope that worked. I'm going to have to clean that up a little bit. Well, it looks like a little more solder than I wanted, but I'll see if I'll can brush that excess solder out of there. Get it looking nice. Okay, this is cooled down. Let's take it out of this tape and see what we're left with here. Be careful not to bend the Okay, when we trim this, I can't really tell as I'm looking. I'll try to clean up. I'll file a little bit of that solder off of that because we've got some excess solder on that. And that's not going to focus. But that came out nicely. When we trim that, and we'll trim it probably about right in this area here and a little bit at the top, we'll be left with our antenna. Okay, I've cleaned up the antenna with a file and clipped it. And there's our antenna. I have the antenna trimmed and painted and secured in the hole. And this concludes the House Stanice build. We'll finish out with a couple of turns around the turntable and a few still shots. And thank you guys for watching Everon Railways.